What if there was a good shepherd and then there was a bad shepherd? What would a bad shepherd do? And I immediately started thinking about, there's a story. Do you remember the story of the boy that called wolf? Right? He called wolf. And I talked to my children about that and the importance of your word meaning something. This week, we had that situation where my son told his sister, he's very generous in July. He's not as generous at Christmas. December comes around and he's not as generous. And you guys can keep him accountable to this. My son told his sister, I am going to buy you a mini fridge. But we have to get clarity on the terms here. He said, up to a value of $50. Now, originally he says, I'll buy you a mini fridge for $50. And then he changed it and said, up to $50. And then he found a mini fridge for $35. So he was very generous, and then he started to back off that generosity. And so I proceeded to share with him that he needs to be able to keep his word. And I shared with him that, if people start to gain a reputation for being less than honest, that people won't trust you anymore. They won't believe a word that you say. And when it's time to say something that's really important, nobody's listening. So you got to keep your word. You got to follow through. It's important. But in the story of the boy that called wolf, what happened? There was a boy, and he was responsible for caring for the sheep, to protect the sheep. And what happened? Well, he decided he wanted to entertain himself. So while he was out there and his responsibility was to care for the sheep, he decided that rather than caring for the sheep, he was going to have a little bit of fun with the townspeople. So he would lead the sheep, and he'd run to town, and he'd say, there's a wolf, and everybody would come out. We're familiar with the story? They're coming out to provide protection. They're coming out to help him. And then he would laugh, and he would laugh, and he would laugh. He was a bad shepherd. And one day, a wolf did come. And he ran, and he told the townspeople, come, help the sheep. Help me. And the townspeople said, no, I don't believe you anymore. That would be what a bad shepherd is. And yet Jesus describes himself here as the good shepherd. And he goes into detail on what that means. What does it mean to be a good shepherd?